Today on the Andrew Cooperrider Show, nationally the left is hopping mad at Taylor Swift. There's a controversy afoot. I'll take a second to cover what's going on with the controversy. Even though this isn't per se about Kentucky news, it's still worth talking about because it points to why we have so much division going on within our country. The federal courts have made a ruling in the Republican County Party's favor regarding their ability to spend money advocating for or against a constitutional amendment, whether or not they're allowed to expend party funds on it. Fayette County schools say they are leaving X, and the reason is kind of ridiculous, leaves you scratching your head. And then finally, we'll return back to national news and talk about how Kamala Harris has released her platform, and she's really relying on people to not understand a simple, basic fact. We're going to have all that and more today on the Andrew Cooperrider Show. Before I dig down into it, please make sure you like, comment, share, and subscribe. Make sure you leave a review for the podcast on any podcasting formula. It helps the algorithm, helps the formulas to show me to more people. But if you leave those reviews, you can do it on Spotify, you can do it on Apple. Only if they're positive, though. If they're negative, I don't want your review. Nobody wants your opinion because you're just a negative person. But without further ado, let's dig down into it. Now, before I go into my few stories I listed at the top, I wanted to take a second and talk about just something that I find completely interesting. So a while ago at Red Mile, they had camel and ostrich races. Obviously, at Red Mile, we have horse races where horses run around a track and pull a cart. And so they also had a day where they had some ostrich races and some camel races. And I recorded a short video while I was there watching the ostrich races. And then I posted that short video on to Facebook and just said, KY ostrich races. I didn't think much of it. Really didn't get too many views at the time. But then somehow, some way, it got rediscovered within the past week. And over the last week, I've had over 74,000 views on this reel and hundreds of comments. And the majority of those comments, majority of the people are saying that this is mean, cruel, evil. This is awful things. These are cruel people. What are they cheering? They're absolutely awful, horrible, no good individuals for cheering on ostriches pulling people in carts. Which is interesting that they would call this cruelty to animals. Why are these people cheering? There's even people that I know live in Kentucky and are part of the horse industry that have said things like, oh, that's mean and cruel. And that leaves me to a question. I think that's to an issue, going on. And that is the inability for people to really stop and think about what they're saying. Okay, these same people that would have issues, these people getting real upset over these ostrich races that went on in Kentucky at Red Mile, would have no issue. They don't say anything about horses, literal horses, pulling carts with people on it beforehand. So you're talking about these ostriches. They're pulling people along on these carts the same exact way a horse would be pulling people along. It's okay. So if you think ostriches pulling carts is horrible, I mean, let me read to you some of these comments here. These birds wanted to get away as quick as they could, didn't think it was funny. Well, obviously horses run as fast as they could too. Poor birds, poor things, angry face, angry face, angry face, so wrong. Angry faces. This is obviously not a hit in the comments. What the frig is the matter with these screaming, cruel people? Freaking people abusing animals everywhere. Interesting, only thumbs up reaction is available to me on the slow to be. And so the comments go on and on and on like that with people upset that they're racing birds on chariots. But yeah, they don't say a word about horses. I don't know. It's just interesting to me how they're all animals and yet we deem them at different value levels. Obviously humans are more valuable than animals. And it's interesting to me that we look at things like ostriches racing and say somehow that is crueler than horses racing. And you can say, well, that's because horses want to do that and they're meant to do that and everything else. Well, ostriches do all kinds of work in their native countries too as well. So I just noticed that and I wanted to take a second to talk about that because obviously I'm not responding to all these comments. There's hundreds of them. But I did want to speak on something that I pushed out there that people are all upset about. They're upset at Andrew again because he cheered on ostriches racing at a horse racing place. How dare I? Following up, though, here, starting with the actual stories I listed at the top, there's a Taylor Swift controversy going around. Now, for those of you unaware of what's going around, you're lucky because yesterday on Twitter, there was millions of shares, millions of views, millions of comments, maybe not millions, but thousands of comments regarding this Taylor Swift controversy. And what's a controversy? Well, for those of you who are blissfully unaware, Taylor Swift is dating Travis Kelce. They've been together about a year now. Maybe there might be something real there. I don't know or not. I kind of think this situation will probably tell us if Taylor Swift is actually like dating Travis Kelce and actually really loves him or not. But anyways, putting that to the side, not that I'm a big Swiftie or anything else, but we're forced to follow this content. This Taylor Swift stuff is forced upon us. But anyways, Taylor Swift was at some sort of event with Travis Kelce and they were in some sort of box watching maybe football or something else. And in that box with them is Patrick Mahomes and his wife. Patrick Mahomes is the quarterback of the Chiefs. Travis Kelce's tight end of the Chiefs. And so when we look at that interactions, everybody was watching the interactions between Taylor Swift and Mahomes' wife. I believe her name is Brittany Mahomes. I probably should have Googled it real quick, but I believe it's Brittany Mahomes. Let me check. Yeah, okay, it is Brittany Mahomes. And so Taylor Swift is facing backlash because she dared to hug Brittany Mahomes. Brittany Mahomes, who has liked posts about Trump. She's indicated through her likes on social media that she is a Trump supporter, a Trump voter. And Taylor Swift had the audacity to hug her, had the audacity to be nice to her despite having different political opinions. And the left is hopping mad about this. The left is super, super angry about this. And I think this really points to how the Democrats have literally nothing that they're running on nationally. Because why is this such a bother? Why are they so upset over Taylor Swift hugging a Trump supporter? Well, because they are relying on the American people, or at least enough of them, to truly believe that Trump is Hitler. That Trump is going to destroy democracy. That Trump is going to throw you all back in chains. It's going to be like the Handmaid's Tale. Women will be forced to bear children under Trump. They'll be forced to reproduce. That's what they peddle out there. And the problem is that if you actually believe that, if that wasn't just rhetoric, but real truth, which they need you to believe, well, you would never be friends with an individual who votes for Hitler. If Trump is actually Hitler, you would never be friends with a Hitler supporter. You'd never be friends with a person who supports a dictator. You'd never be friends with these individuals. This is such an existential threat. Trump poses such a threat to us, supposedly, that the people who enable him, the people that would vote for him, are they themselves bad people? That's what the Democrats are peddling. They want it to be faux pas to even think to be a Trump supporter. Because if it's faux pas to be a Trump supporter, well, anything you say or do that helps Trump, including questioning Kamala Harris's stances, well, that would mean that you're helping a literal dictator who's going to end democracy, Donald Trump. And see, Taylor Swift, like it or not, is an example. She's a role model for a lot of individuals, especially young, unmarried women. And Kamala Harris does really, really well with young, unmarried women. In fact, the only reason why it's competitive in this election is because Kamala Harris is doing so good with single women who Taylor Swift uniquely reaches out to. And if there is even a 1 or 2 or 3% fall away from that base, well then they're going to have issues. Kamala Harris's problems will compounds. She has no way of winning. If she loses 2 or 3% of single, especially white women, she's done. She's cooked. Put a fork in her. She's done. She ain't winning this election. And so in order to get you to not ask questions about what does Kamala Harris stand for, they're peddling this Trump is an existential threat. But if the role model for all these women are able to be friends with Trump supporters, well, that means that these women may think it's okay for them to be friends with Trump supporters. They can talk to Trump supporters. And when they talk and are friends with Trump supporters, they might find out that the people who support Trump aren't crazy MAGA, stupid people who are whatever. They're people who say, look, I understand he doesn't have the best morals in his personal life per se. I understand that, he's been married several times. I understand he's not exactly a little gruff around the edges. He's not as nice as sometimes we want. But at the same time, I had a better economy. My family was able to put food on the table. And I worried less about what was going on around the world when Trump was in office because we didn't have any new wars. And if they start hearing that and understanding where Trump supporters are coming from, the excitement to turn out and vote for Kamala Harris goes down the tubes. People are not as motivated. In fact, a few people may end up coming over. But what ends up happening so that's why they attacking her so viciously. She cannot be friends with the Trump supporter. If she does, it's bad news bears. Bad news bears. But there's another problem that's coming up too on the Chiefs. Remember, Buckner, the kicker, who gave that speech at the Catholic college, is also on there. And remember, he was attacked for being anti-woman. And this is where I said early on, not to get into relationships, but I think this is a real test for if Travis Kelce and Taylor Swift actually love each other. There is obvious on the football team, they don't really care about each other's politics. Guys can have a disagreement when they're a part of a team. And I'm talking about guys here because obviously there's nothing but guys on the football team. Women can do it too. But guys that are a part of a team can get along with one another despite having completely different viewpoints all over the board elsewise. They can get together on the team because they're coming together around a common goal to win the game. And so they don't care that Buckner is a kicker. They don't care that Patrick Mahomes' wife is a Trump supporter. They don't care that Travis Kelce's girlfriend is a famous billionaire singer. They don't care. What they care about is winning the game. And so the problem will become is that if Taylor Swift crumples under this pressure, if she feels like she has to not get along with the other wives and girlfriends of the football players because, she might get yelled at by the mob of leftists, well then she will obviously drive a wedge on the team, which will cause issues in her relationship. And I'm not trying to spend a whole lot of time on that dumb stuff. But I'm using this to point out an overall story, though. Why married women are more, tend to be, especially women with children, tend to be more conservative. And we're kind of watching if Taylor Swift really does end up marrying Travis Kelce and they have family and everything else. We're watching this progression of a person who really probably didn't have very many political convictions. She put out her political songs and things. She's a little late to the game behind everybody because she just wanted to sing her music, right? Sing about things that mattered to her. But, everybody demanded she weigh in on these social issues. So she did, much like any college girl would, that maybe doesn't have a whole lot of political convictions. And then she comes along and she meets a guy and gets married and experiences life. And through those life experiences, she realizes that, this idea of a lot of the things that she used to not even feel strongly about, but was almost browbeat into believing she doesn't actually agree with. And they become more conservative. And for Taylor Swift, we may be watching that happen real time. I'm not going to pretend like she's going to be a Trump supporter this time around or not. She may not support Kamala Harris, though. But I'm not going to pretend she's going to be a Trump supporter this time around. But it is worth pointing out, and I'm sorry for all of you who've had to endure me talking about Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce's relationship. But I do find it fascinating because it really does, like I said, it looks at the progression of the conservative family unit. Not talking about politically, but that conservative family unit and how that can shape people. And the problem for the response from the Democrats and the extreme leftists here to Taylor Swift is they're actually responding in what might be the worst way possible. Because now the Taylor Swift people are defending Taylor Swift by saying, you shouldn't hate people of different political opinions. You're forcing them to say that. You're forcing them to say you shouldn't hate people because they have different political opinions. And if they're saying that, well, they might start to believe it themselves. Then suddenly they start getting along with that Trump voting father that they disowned, or those family members that they said were too conservative. And as they start to get along with them, they start to understand where they're coming from. Maybe they don't end up as Republican voters, but they certainly aren't as motivated and do not think that, well, these people over here, these MAGA people, are an existential threat to the country. So I do think that is fascinating. That's why it's worth talking about. Moving on here, the federal courts, Sixth Circuit Court, has ruled in favor of the Republican county parties when it comes to campaigning on constitutional amendments. So this has been an issue where we've had the Boone County, we've had Hardin County, we've had Jessamine County. I don't know if there's other counties that joined in. I know those three, Boone County, Jessamine County, and Hardin County, who wanted to expend money supporting Amendment 2, the school choice amendment. And they were told by the Kentucky Registry of Election Finance, which is the enforcement arm of the state for expenditure laws, enforcing campaigning laws when it comes to both political campaigns of a candidate nature and political campaigns when it comes to constitutional questions on the ballot. They're the enforcement arm. They said, no, county parties are not allowed to expend money on these constitutional questions, which is kind of a crazy thing to say. Because obviously, this is money that is given to do political speaking, to money given to these parties to express their First Amendment right. Because remember, your First Amendment isn't just religion or freedom of the press. Very specifically, political activity is explicitly protected in our First Amendment of our Constitution. And so when people are a political organization, they're not a nonprofit. Nobody gets a tax credit for giving them money. You know, if they were a nonprofit who is getting a tax break to their donors for people giving them money, well, then in that case, the KREF could say they can't expend that money because the government is giving them a tax break on the money they're bringing in to the people who are giving them the money. But they're nonprofits, but they're political nonprofits. And so because they're political nonprofits, people who donate them money do not get a deduction on their taxes. And so the people who are giving them money are giving them the money to express speech. And for a long time, the Supreme Court and our federal courts have held that using your money to express your viewpoint is protected, especially in politics, is protected by the First Amendment. So clearly, KREF was wrong to say that a political organization who is given money to express political opinions, it would be violating the First Amendment rights of those people who give that money to forbade these political parties, like the Republican county parties, from being allowed to expend the political money they've raised in order to support or defeat a constitutional amendment. And I think that's really important that the federal court has stepped in. I have no idea where KREF got off thinking somehow that, a political party isn't allowed to campaign on that. I guess they say that, their point is, the only thing I can think of is their thought process here. So political parties, unlike PACs, are allowed to do something different, and that is they're allowed to coordinate with the candidate. So PACs can spend an unlimited amount of money helping a candidate, but they're not allowed to coordinate with that candidate. And it goes into contribution limits and a whole bunch of other things we're not going to discuss right now because I'm already almost 20 minutes into this podcast. So putting that to the side. But PACs can expend an unlimited amount, but they can't coordinate. However, political parties are specifically allowed to spend unlimited amounts of money, but they're also allowed to coordinate with political candidates. That's a very specific thing they're allowed to do. And that is because, obviously, as a political party, they're pushing forward their candidates. Their candidates are a part of their party. Their party had a process of selecting them as the candidate. Clearly, there would need to be coordination, and clearly the parties are given money to achieve political victory for their platform, which involves making sure they get candidates with their party in office, period. And so I guess their thought process is that political parties are specific PACs that are only allowed to donate money and give money and expend money helping people get elected. That would be your thought process, but they're clearly wrong. That's clearly mistaken, because parties can also expend money doing registration drives to get people registered as Republicans. The parties can spend money just simply not promoting anything specifically at all other than the Republican Party. They can expend money bringing in donations. They can expend money putting forward political speech about things like local tax increases and saying, hey, we want to fight this tax increase. They can take part in campaigns defeating tax increases and collecting signatures in order to put the question on the ballot. They can take part in all that. They're not limited. So clearly KREF was wrong. This ruling comes out, puts an injunction on them, enforcing it. Should free up these parties to go ahead and move forward. Obviously, KREF will try to appeal. Interesting point in this story was that KREF went to the Attorney General's office and asked the Attorney General to join them in defending the state. And the Attorney General told them to kick rocks and joined the county parties, saying, no, they're right, you're wrong, you should back off. So they may not appeal it, because obviously this goes into now KREF's budget and they have to expend more money fighting on this. It's certainly an interesting thing to occur. Here's another story coming out from Fayette County Schools. Says they're no longer going to post on X. They say they don't get enough engagement. They say they get more engagement on Facebook than they do on X, and therefore they're not going to expend resources posting on Twitter. And let me tell you why this is pretty ridiculous. First off, that determined X was no longer a platform that generated engagement. The district said it found engagement on Facebook was close to 47%, 32% on Instagram, and almost 19% on LinkedIn. And I believe what they're looking at, and they say, meanwhile, X is around 2.4%. So what they're looking at is the amount of people who viewed something compared to the amount of people who interacted with it. When we look at their Facebook page, we're seeing posts. For example, on August 30th, 12:30, we see a post that had 30 likes, 2 shares. And it was representatives from the Embassy of the People's Republic of China in Washington, D.C. recently visited Fayette County Public Schools to learn about our Chinese language program. Post below that, the Miranda Scully, our Director of Family and Community Engagement, FACE, has 169 likes, 18 comments, 13 shares. But meanwhile, if you go over to X and go to their Fayette County Public Schools and you go to the same post. Now, keep in mind on X, they have about a fourth of the followers as they do elsewhere. But if we look at something like, and I picked those two at random, and I wanted to scroll enough away from their announcement that maybe people weren't going back to like things to be like, no, I pay attention on X. But anyways, so when we go to the same post there, when it comes to the Chinese delegates, we're seeing that that has 1 retweet, 2 likes, but only 588 views. And then when we scroll down even farther here, when we see the Miranda Scully thing, we see 2 comments, 3 shares, 13 likes. So if you'd figure, so take that Miranda Scully one, 2 comments, 3 retweets, 13 likes. The same one has 169 likes, 18 comments, 13 shares. But when you look, the Facebook page has 4 times as many followers as the Twitter page. So 4 times as many, you're starting to get a little bit closer. You're not quite there, but you're starting to get closer. But I don't think that's the engagement that they're talking about as far as the percentage of their actual followers. I think they're looking at who they show it to. And Facebook famously requires a lot higher of an engagement rate to show things to people. Because on Twitter, it's a little more comfortable to infinitely scroll, to just keep scrolling and seeing posts. But what I find absolutely stupid, the arguments here really don't matter, because this is what's important, is on average, their average post on X is seen by over 1,000 people. Over 1,000 people. Now, how much does it cost you to post on X? Now, we've argued about expending money by public schools in order to defeat Amendment 2. We've talked about Pulaski County schools making posts on social media. The difference there is they created the content. But they're already and they're still creating the content. This is my point. Is that they're still going to keep posting on Facebook. They're going to keep posting on Instagram. They're going to keep posting on LinkedIn. They're going to keep posting on several social media sites. So they're still creating the same content that they are and then posting it they just post on Twitter. So really, realistically speaking, we're talking about the time it takes to upload a photo and copy paste. We're not talking about the time it takes to also create the content. But here's the other problem, I think, with their engagement rules and everything else, and I've learned this on Twitter too as well. They do a lot of pictures, and they do a lot of pictures because Instagram is obviously a big place of their engagement, and Instagram requires you to make a post with a photo. But on X, on Twitter, you do better with words than you do photos. And photos do better on Facebook and Instagram than just words do. That's something I've found out. I don't know why, but something in the algorithm maybe. It doesn't really matter. What's important is it literally costs them nothing. It takes 2 seconds of their time, who's ever making the post on social media, to upload it and copy paste it. But no, I think what it's really about and why they're running away from Twitter is because they don't have the kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? The people pushing Twitter, they want to get off because it's too, conservative. Because, conservative people. Because, people who want to know what's going on within a school district that they give their tax monies to. But if they're of the wrong political tint, Fayette County Schools doesn't want to engage with them. Fayette County Schools wants to be able to retreat to a place like Facebook where a lot of the things you say have to be censored because they don't want actual feedback. That's what it's really about. It's not about time or engagement or anything like that. It's simply about the fact that they don't want to be held accountable to people who would care. And Twitter shows their posts by percentage to way more of their followers than Facebook does. And the people that are seeing it on Twitter typically are more conservative than they are on Facebook now because of Elon Musk. And they don't want that either. So it certainly points to, there's not really a good reason. That's my point. It's absolutely stupid, and they should rethink this, obviously. All right, final story here. Moving again to national politics. I know today I've talked a fair amount about national issues and spent probably too much time on them. But we've got the big debate tonight, so it is worth spending some time on. And this is an important thing to watch for in the debate tonight. And that is whether or not Kamala Harris continues to rely on the American people not realizing what the difference is and what it means to be a corporation. Because we see Kamala Harris saying, we're not going to raise taxes on the middle class. We're going to raise taxes on the millionaires and billionaires. We're going to raise corporate tax. Corporate tax almost 33% of a raise. Meanwhile, she claims she's not raising taxes on the middle class. She says, we're not going to raise taxes on the middle class. We're just going to raise the corporate tax by 8%. Those two things cannot coexist together. You cannot raise corporate tax without raising taxes on the middle class. And she hopes you're so stupid that you believe you can. Here's why. One of the people that are in the middle class, especially individuals, but a fair amount of the people in the middle class are business owners. They are. Whether they're trade business owners where they work for themselves as HVAC plumbers, or they work for themselves as in they own a small business, or even they own a bigger business. Most of the people in the middle class, not most, but a really large amount of them are business owners. They are. That's the American dream, to start a business and be able to work for yourself so you don't have to work for other people, right? Well, what she's relying on to make you believe that you can raise corporate taxes without raising the taxes on middle class is that you don't realize who gets charged a corporate tax. You see, a corporation, an S Corp or a C Corp, is just a way of designating your company for tax purposes, for the IRS. Typically speaking, it has a lot to do with Medicare, Medicaid taxes, a self-employment tax that's really high. And so, you can move over to a business in order to get a lower self-employment tax, but then you still have to pay a W-2 tax when you're cut a paycheck from your company. It's very complicated, but here's all you need to know, is that the minute a business starts making, just tax-wise right now, the minute a business starts making right around 150 to 200K a year in net profit, it is now time to go ahead and a lot of companies will switch over to being a corporation. So she wants you to think that a corporation is a multi-billion-dollar company. But just about every single company that makes more than $200,000 a year in net profit is a corporation too, if they have a tax person. And let's talk about that for a second. You may say, well, 200 grand, that's a fair amount. Fair amount for a family to make. Well, hold on here, because a lot of small businesses, both the husband and wife will work in them. Me and my wife work together in our businesses. And so what you're talking about is two individuals earning 100K a year before taxes. Keep my taxes come out of that. And also keep in mind that 200,000 in net profit, well, you have to leave some in if you want to grow and to leave for investment and everything else. And so basically speaking, if you have a business and you also still, keep in mind, have to pay for your own health insurance and retirements and things, and that doesn't happen when you work for someone else. So I would say a business earning $200,000 in net profit, if both husband and wife are working in it, would be about the equivalent of a husband and wife earning about $75K a year. That'd be about the same, especially when you get into taxation rates and things like that. About $75K a year each. That's the middle class. A household income of $150,000, two working adults making $75K a year. It's a good, I'm not going to pretend like here in Kentucky that's not a fairly good living by a lot of standards places. I'm not saying they're poor, but she said she's not raising taxes on the middle class. You're raising taxes 33% on people making $150K a year as a family. You can't say you're not raising taxes on the middle class and then simultaneously raise corporate tax. She's hoping that all these people that go to vote for her think, when they think of corporations, they're thinking of places like Tesla and Amazon and all these big billion, multi-billion dollar companies. She's hoping you're not thinking of that mom and pop shop that might make 150, 200 grand a year in profit after both the owners work their tails off and also employ several, if not a dozen or so, but between 5 to 10 local individuals as well, and offer them flexibility in pay. She's hoping you don't realize that. She's hoping that your hate for big corporations, the hate for giant companies that you feel treat you unfairly, will cause you to vote for her so she can raise taxes on that local restaurant in town you like, or that raise taxes on that local mechanic. Raise taxes on your local small HVAC companies. Make it harder for those who are already struggling. That's who's struggling the most in our current economy, from the Biden-Harris economy. Those making right in that range. Those making more than 50 grand a year each, and those making less than probably 200 grand a year, as less than 150 grand a year each. Right around, I'm not saying people making more aren't struggling too in a way, or people making less, but my point is that if under the Biden-Harris administration, there's a lot more handouts for people with low income status, and there will be more handouts for people with low income status. So they may not be doing worse. They may be doing better. And those who have plenty of money maybe they're doing worse, things cost more, but they don't notice it as much because they've got some extra that they could spare due to their hard work or anything else. I'm not bemoaning them for doing that, but that is the point. But those who, Maybe they had a few thousand in savings. They're hitting their stride. They're in the middle class. They're building a family. They're paying off their home. They're trying to get to the point where they can be comfortable. That's who's struggling the most. And that's who she's raising taxes on while simultaneously claiming to not raise taxes on them. And she hopes you're stupid enough to believe her. Prove her wrong. Well, y'all, that's what we got time for today on the Andrew Cooperrider Show. We'll be back here tomorrow. Hope you all have a great rest of your day.